Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
I really appreciate it. I'll give you kind of heads up on the like 5 minute mark or something, but yeah, I really appreciate your time.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Absolutely.
I've actually been your sketchy van stuff has been like one of the stuff that's been on the playlist while I was doing like my graphic novel last year. So
Yeah.
I got to
Wow.
kind of sit down and hear a lot about your conversations. But I'm curious about your journey and how you decided to do that. So can you tell me a little bit about like where did that idea come from? How did it start? I know you were working with Proco
Yeah.
for a while, and then kind of ventured off on your own. So tell me about the origin story, let's say, of the Sketchy Van podcast.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think it starts with just the urge to travel. As a kid, I was always pretty shy and pretty reserved, pretty anxious. Like I didn't really want to do anything. I was so socially anxious at the age of 16 that I couldn't like that I wouldn't be willing to like open the door for the pizza guy because I was like too afraid to go out and to talk to a stranger essentially. And I
Yeah.
guess as I got older, I kind of like took little steps towards becoming like a little bit braver and braver. Like I started doing like little road trips around California. One day I decided like I'm gonna go to Mexico just because I'd never really left the country before. And
Yeah.
then that urge, that like um, doing the thing that I felt like I was really bad at, got to the point over time to where I was like, oh, like maybe I can start driving around the country. Maybe I can start asking people and talking to people that I admire about how they found like a place in the world, whether it's
Yeah.
like a career or a family or whatever. Um, and I
Well,
guess
yeah,
sorry, go
go
ahead.
ahead. Sorry.
I guess it fundamentally stems from like following my curiosity about people and I guess just human nature, and all
Well,
that kind
that sounds like a huge step to take, especially with you explaining how anxious you were. Where do you remember a moment where that shifted for you, where you made that decision, like let's risk being brave, let's because a lot of anxious people, by the way, uh, they rarely find the motivation to address their anxiety. So they're kind of like the challenge is too strong, and without a support system, it sounds like that must have been a scary thought when you first encountered it. Like let me just get in a van and
of.
travel. Uh, so between being too anxious to open the door for the pizza guy and traveling, that's a huge step. Did you
Yeah, well,
take it in smaller steps, or were you kind of sick and tired of feeling anxious?
I guess it was a bit of both. I mean, I think, I mean, I from across the board, everyone I've ever talked to has experienced moments in their life where they're feeling like they're not doing the things they want to be doing. They might be pursuing a college degree that is not very meaningful to them, or they're in a relationship that doesn't really, you know, do it for them emotionally, or they feel like they're in the wrong career path or whatever. And I think that at a certain point, like the acceptance that it's never going to get easier, and then the like I guess trying like it was like a very intentional thing at trying to make my own decisions in terms of like I know that objectively like maybe it's a better path to go to business school to become a doctor or a lawyer or become like some business executive, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day I think we realist I guess this is a long answer to your question, but
It's okay.
we realistically don't have that many things in our lives that we care about. So I think it's um, very important to pay attention to those thoughts and feelings when they arise.
And I guess that in some sense, you were fortunate in a sense to discover that at a younger age. There are a lot of people that are in their mid 40s having put in 15 years into a career they don't like, going, what the hell am I doing here?
Yeah.
Uh, but it seems like you were conscious of that early on. Was there a lot of pressure in your life to kind of pick the
Well,
right path or pick the right choice, whether that's like a family thing or a cultural thing? Do you think there was an understanding that or an urge not to waste time or get into a lucrative or sensible kind of career path?
Well, I think there was a few things. Like the first thing, my dad was pretty successful in entertainment, but I never really like when I would see him be stressed out about his job, I'd be like, oh, I actually don't want to do that. That
Oh,
doesn't
what
seem
did
like
he do, by the way, if you don't mind?
he worked for Marvel and he worked for DC and for various entertainment companies and like he's always had like good jobs, but they've always been like they've taken away from his personal life in a way that I don't think is actually very healthy for most people.
Was it an administrative job or an art related job?
It was
Creative job.
it was on the business end. So
Okay,
he
okay.
worked for DC Comics as vice president of marketing or something, and
Okay.
ran Wildstorm Comics and stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, and then recently he was like publisher at Marvel and stuff. And I think it's the problem with those jobs is because they're so all encompassing to your time and they require so much uh I guess like such a large portion of your life to get there where you have enough credibility and enough I guess competence to be able to do that job well that it eats up everything.
Yeah.
And um it's like I'm not saying like it's great for some people, not great for others. I'm one of those people that it's probably not that great for. And um the I guess the second thing to that, like I would see my dad, he's very stressed out about his job and corporate America.
Yeah.
And then I was, to be honest, I was bullied pretty bad as a kid as well, which I think kind of put me in a place emotionally to where I was really like wanting to look for other things in my life other than just be like conventional, like go 9 to 5, this is it. This is
Yeah.
where like you go to college and then you get a job and that's what you do for 40 years. And I never felt like, and I know a lot of people feel this way, but I never really felt like I had fit in school or in like the traditional path of following academia,
Yeah.
um, PhD, master, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And I'm sorry to hear about those early life experiences at school. Do you feel like can you identify a place that you currently feel like you fit in, or is it more let me do my own solo thing and that's kind of where I can control the outcomes of my life?
Well, the thing that I learned is that a lot of those feelings were actually internal. The feeling of not fitting in was a subjective thing I think I was feeling just because, you know, when you're in a place where you don't feel like you belong or you don't have enough perspective on the world, it's easy to become nihilistic and kind of feel like everything that you do is not important. And again, I'm saying this from the perspective that I think everybody feels like an outcast to some degree at some level.
Yeah, and I
Um,
think there are a lot of factors. I mean, I definitely relate to that a lot because I was obsessed with being a professional artist for as long as I discovered that an art can be a career. And I
yeah.
discovered that pretty late. Like I was just obsessed, unreasonably obsessed. Like I kind of wanted art to save me from a regular life, a
Yeah.
regular existence. And I think I had a moment of crisis in the first Lightbox Expo. I don't know if you were there or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
I kind of walked around and I had a full portfolio with me. And I kept walking around, kept getting feedback, and something just did not feel right. I kept going, I don't know. I don't know if this is not what I thought I wanted, or this is not what I thought it was. And I had a moment of crisis. I was like, I don't know if I want this. This does not feel good for me. And I kind of have a similar thing. It was like, I like to draw and paint, but this is a whole different thing that I didn't consider until I was actually sitting here in front of all these industry people. I was like, I don't know if this is my scene at all.
Yeah.
And it threw me on a 2 year worth of a loop. I was like, I don't know what to do anymore. I'm not sure. Uh, so is that the kind of thing that you're talking about, which is like even creatively, you're not sure you want to like hold a job and do a 9 to 5 and do projects like that?
Well, I feel like more so, I was talking to a friend about this, but I think the real job in creativity is not the difficulty of the work, because I think that anyone can learn to do an illustration or learn perspective drawing or anatomy or any of that stuff to make something that's good for a video game or some splash illustration or something. Like
Yeah.
the information is pretty objectively easy to understand. It just takes a long time to get good at it. And I think the actual job is figuring out something you can get up every day and be excited about doing, or at least not you're make yourself suffer, like make yourself like happy enough or reduce the suffering enough to where you can like reasonably do it and
Yeah.
not lose
And
progress.
do you feel like you found that in art, or have you find that period, or is that still a search for you?
I think it's a search for everybody, you know, like
Yeah.
again, I like if you talk to any of these people, like even the people at Lightbox or like the like big artists that we all look up to as being the like paradigm of what an art career could be, you know, or Proko or Bobby Chu or whatever. They have moments of like, I don't know what I'm doing, you know, it's like this is too hard or this is like I don't know where to go from here. And I think that's part of that's actually the hardest part about a creative career to me in general is like being able to wake up every day and uh be okay with like either imposter. And it's something that Steven Zapata talked about once, which stuck with me. It was like you have two imposters inside of yourself. One is the like depressed, hateful side that's like, I'm an idiot, I'll never be good enough. And then the other side of you is like, oh, I'm gonna be the best or I am the best. And you know, no one can tell me what to do. And either both of those things are totally ludicrous and ridiculous to listen to.
Yeah.
But somewhere in the middle is the key.
Yeah. I remember when after 3 days of just feeling horrible at Lightbox, on the last day, for some reason, I think the stars aligned, and I ended up spending 20 minutes one on one with Ian McCaig.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And he's looking at my stuff, and he was like, what are you doing this for? What kind of what project are you part of? I was like, I'm not part of the project. This is a personal project. And he got so excited in front of me, and I was confused, like, what are you excited about? Like, everybody here wants your job in a sense, but you're so happy that I'm doing my personal project. He's like, and he was explaining to me that no, that's what I want to do. And
yeah,
it kind of made me realize that I'm never in the moment, that I am actually in a position where I could create my own stuff. I'm not financially depending on art. Like, I have a daytime job. It's funding my art career or my art hobbies and interests. And I was like, look, this is a professional artist who wants to finish his day job just so he can go off and do his own projects. And it
yeah,
made me think, you're running away from somewhere thinking that you want to like get to a level in your career where you could be independent enough and do your own stuff, and you're not realizing that you're already there and everything is okay.
yeah,
um which kind of made me reevaluate my approach to art and not look at it as a means to an end, but like, no, this is the end for
yeah,
itself. I'm doing it for the creation or for the process, and I'm being happy doing it. And I remember like listening to a lot of artists talk about romanticizing the time in their lives when they were studying and when they were learning stuff and when they're doing stuff, and kind of wishing that they can go back to that, and thinking to myself, well, I'm in that period right now.
yeah,
Like, I would be, it would be wise to enjoy this right now and not
yeah.
look for some weird goal that you're gonna just momentarily enjoy and then it all dissipates and you're back to square one, not knowing what to do. Um, so I'm curious then, you embarked on this long journey to kind of talk to other artists. Was there a goal in mind to kind of like, hey, I'm trying to learn something, I'm trying to gain perspective? Or was it just, hey, this is an excuse to travel and I like to talk art with people, and let's just kind of take it as it is without having to put like goals or outcomes attached to it?
Again, I think it's a bit of both. Like it was me like wanting to. I've always wanted to do the van thing. I've had dreams of doing it for years, and I've also wanted to try and make the like I have a lot of conversations with people, and I'm told that they're valuable, and it's like trying to make some of that open to people. Just from like a like it nice for me to document it for myself, and also just cool to be able to have these conversations with people. And then the second is just like uh I I like believe in doing things badly, and I believe in doing the things that like doing things in the way that you want to do them. Like uh the act of like going out and doing something like that and taking a risk and like if you've listened to my podcast before, it's like I talk about like what would you do if you had $1 billion, you know? Like would
Yeah.
you be the same exact thing you'd be doing right now if you had $1 billion? And if the answer is yes, then you should keep doing it. And the question is way more about like what would you do if you had zero external factors influencing your life, you know? Like if I could pay somebody money to stop drawing, or if I could pay money to somebody to stop like trying to be an animator or try to work on movies or something, then they probably shouldn't be doing that thing in the first place.
So did you
And
ever answer that question for yourself? You might have, but I'm not sure if I remember or caught that specific podcast. But what would you do if you had all the money in the world and no external validation?
probably what I'm doing right now, you know, just trying to be curious about the world, like trying to be genuine with the way I approach people and answer questions and like I it sounds corny, but like honesty and authenticity. Like I think that uh you know, just by the nature of working in a commercial industry, you're working extremely hard to be chosen among, you know, 10,000 or 20,000 or a million people for a job working on Star Wars or like Riot Games or
Yeah.
whatever. I think just by the nature of wanting to trying to be chosen by some stranger, you might filter parts of yourself out that, it's different for everybody. I'm not saying it's
Yeah.
a bad
No, I know,
thing.
I know. This is a subjective answer for you, and I don't mind it because I relate to it a lot too.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's wonderful to hear that you would be doing what you're doing right now. That means you're. Does it feel like you're in the right place? Like that this feels good, or is it hard to feel that when you're in it?
I think, I mean, it changes day to day. You know, it's like I think that the actual moment to moment, day to day being creative is pretty tedious. Like whether you're Ian McKeg or some beginner artist, Ian McKeg as an artist, most of his day is just spent behind like a drafting table, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and uh, you know, I think that there's like a spiritual element to it where it's like trying to be appreciative of the moment to moment, like um, you know, being okay with where you're at.
Yeah.
And that can sometimes be a struggle because we, as human beings, we have external wants and things we want to try and accomplish. And, you know,
Yeah, there like there's I think an internal mechanism of like always wanting more. But wouldn't it be nice if like your brain always goes there? Like, hey, this is a great house, but wouldn't it be nice if we had an extension? Or like this is a nice extension. Wouldn't it be nice if I had a studio shed? The
yeah,
studio shed is great, but wouldn't it be nice if like and you just keep going?
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I mean, I it's also I think people want to get jobs for the status in the industry, not knowing that like for a long time, I didn't realize that a concept artist is not really hired for their artistic ability per se. Like, and it's not really just for the art making itself. It's a designer job,
yeah,
and you're designing stuff. I don't think Ian McKay gets hired for his rendering ability. He doesn't even care about rendering that much. He's getting hired. I think he gets hired for his enthusiasm
yeah,
and his for like wanting to tell a story and just the morale. And I always tell people, and it seems like I mean, it's a bit of a troll, but I am the least creative person I know. And I
yeah,
don't think just knowing how to make art means you're I don't even approach art creatively. I mean, I write a script and I illustrate it, or I need inspiration from a book, and it's a very literal translation type thing. I don't approach problem solve. My wife is a lot more creative than I am. She doesn't like paint or draw or anything. Um,
right.
and a lot of those designers, it's you know, I talked to somebody who's was dying for a concept artist job, and when she got it, she was spending her entire time just designing props, and I was like, yeah, that's boring. I don't want to like design cups and cutleries and vase. Like that doesn't seem appealing to me.
Yeah,
And I told like I was talking to Steven Zapata the other day, and I was like, my work ethic. He insisted it's not a work ethic. But I was like, I don't even do my best work because I'm not invested and I don't care. And I just don't know how to be happy doing it.
yeah.
So is there if I were to ask you to find like a takeaway or something that is there something that you've learned consistently from the various artists that you talked to?
Yeah, yeah. Um, I think that fundamentally everybody has the same problems. Like everyone, like across, like not just talking to artists in interviews, like traveling around the country, being in the South or being in like Croatia or being wherever, everyone has boyfriend or girlfriend problems. They don't like the amount of money they make. They wish they had a better job. Everybody, if you're a plumber or if you're an artist or a musician or, or if you're like a builder or a politician or whatever, you're always like looking for more, and the people that I think have reached the like closer version of like living the best version of like a life are people that are like able to just focus on the moment to moment, uh, just simple enjoyment of like you say you're not creative, but creativity is actually just one decision after another constructed to be like a much larger thing over time.
Yeah.
And if you can learn to love to find meaning in just like editing a video or drawing a picture and letting your authentic self come through in that way in the moment to moment process, you're going to be a lot better off than if you plan every step. So
No, I
essentially,
hear that. I like
don't
that.
think about creativity, just do it, like,
Yeah. I know you started off a lot of your podcast with, we're not talking techniques here. We're talking like the why behind the art. Um, have you seen that there was a consistent answer, or more importantly, like what's that answer for you? Why do you do art?
it's something to do. I get to be part of a community, it gives me an identity. Like it gives me like and I think it's not evil to want this, but like having worked for Proco and having been like associated to some degree with some artists that I really admire, I have a little bit of an ego, and I think that
We all do. I don't think that's a negative thing at all. I think uh you know when you do assertiveness training or when you do self-esteem and self-worth training as a therapist, you try to find stuff that people enjoy and stuff that they feel they're good at or gives them meaning, and you try to use that as a strength and as a place where they could grow and see themselves in a different light. But I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing at all.
no, I don't think so either. And I think that like being able to like look at myself and say like, oh, it's human to want to be recognized by other people, to be validated by other people. And art to me is just that thing that gives me that validation. It's like I could have been again a plumber or an electrician or like there are people that are better plumbers than we will ever be at art.
Yeah.
They're like
Well,
extremely
yeah, but I think so I've been thinking about uh the fine artist versus the concept artist, or mostly like I've been thinking about atelier training. Did you go to the Jeff
I,
Watts school?
yeah. I went to
Oh, so
the
you had like atelier type training.
yeah, I did.
And
Yeah.
I do think, I mean, I really subscribe to art is a language or a tool of communication. And it doesn't really matter. So I think the good metaphor to use is the difference between a calligrapher and a novelist.
Yeah.
They're both working with words, they're both working with letters. And a calligrapher is a guy who's going, look how well I can draw the letter L, or look at my S. It's really great. And that's how I feel an atelier trained artist is. It's like, look how great I can do this, how I can shade this form, how I can do this hand. I think the end of the goal is the art making. Look how well I can finish this.
Yeah.
And a concept artist or a story artist or a comic artist is more of like a novelist. Is like, look how I can use these words to tell you something. So it's a tool of communication. And I think because my mind has been at the tool of communication part, it's been easy for me not to care so much what's on the page or how well or how technical it is. It's like, I'm trying to communicate something. And when I hit a roadblock and I can't communicate this thing, I'll go study how to do that specific thing and come back and communicate it. And the more I do it, the more I'll get better at communicating it, the more, and then it's about the idea. Versus I think the calligrapher, the atelier artist. So I think Um, I think when somebody is confused as to which one they are, and you can be both, and you can
Yeah.
kind of fluctuate between the two. Um, uh, you can certainly kind of give yourself grief about why am I not good at this or why am I not good at that, where um and how come this guy is a better kind of calligrapher than I am. um
Yeah.
and it's certainly like a difference too about who's your audience. I mean, an audience of artists is really going to focus more on the art making versus what you're trying to communicate, and a non-artist maybe just looks at the subject matter and that's it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a complicated thing. I think it comes down to identity in general. Like, as a human being, you can only be good at like a couple things, you know, like I live, I lived in a car for a couple of years and I have no idea how to change my oil or how to, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
it's like, that's pretty stupid, you know, like I don't know how to do 99% of things. And I think that the act of becoming an artist is all about like finding the like one or two things that you're actually pretty decent at and throw and like, you know, being okay with that, like being okay with being a great concept artist but maybe not a great figurative artist, you know, or like architectural drawing but not necessarily like a
Yeah.
great designer or whatever, you know.
Would
um
it be okay for you if if like if you were objectively or even according to your own judgment, like you were not good at art, would you still do art?
um I think the answer, I don't think I'm good at art now, so I think it's a it it depends on how like bad I perceive myself as, and I think it all comes down to self perception. Like,
But I guess that's my question. Are you harsh on yourself when you feel like you're, and I don't necessarily agree with your self-assessment there. I think, you know, your art is just fine, it's great, and you're putting stuff out there. Um, uh, I've certainly for a while thought my art was terrible based on my social media uh, interactions, and I then decided that's just silly. Um,
right.
but do you take that harshly, or like that, or because, well, first question is your identity as an artist tied to your self-worth a lot? And if so, does it fluctuate how you feel about yourself depending on how you view how well your art is being made?
um it depends. I think it, like, again, us being social creatures, I think we're all looking for validation, and on the more existential survival perspective, if you're trying to be a professional artist and it doesn't seem like anyone is reacting to your work, I think it's very easy to look at, because there's a survival instinct that comes in. Like, the amount of food you eat is relative to how many likes you get on Instagram, you know?
I mean,
And
that's what happened to me at Lightbox. I think I was trying to be a professional and I was either told this is not good enough, or uh, you're doing way more than what we need you to do.
yeah,
I tried to impress everybody. That's how hungry I was. And I was trying to be a storyboard artist, but I painted all my storyboards just in case somebody wants to hire me as an illustrator.
yeah, or a matte painter or something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And all the storyboard portfolio reviews were like, why are you painting this? This is way too much. Like, we don't need you to paint this stuff. And so he's like, you're way overqualified as a storyboard artist. You're painting everything. So
Yeah,
they didn't want to even look at the stuff. And all the storyboard, oh, I mean, all the illustrators were like, yeah, but you're not good enough at illustration yet.
yeah,
Go talk to the storyboard artist. And I couldn't, my desire to please everybody ended up backfiring and I pleased no one.
yeah.
And I was sitting there going, what am I doing? Like,
Well,
catering to everybody's needs but myself.
yeah, I mean, I think the problem with creative jobs is that creativity and survival often work at counterintuitive idea, or they work against each other in a lot of ways. And
Yeah.
I think that to become a commercial artist, I think, or to become a great artist, you first have to be able to make something that you like first, you know. Um, and I know that could be argued and stuff, but the I think the way that anyone gets work in the industry is like making something that genuinely resonates with you, because if it resonates with you first, then you know it resonates with at least one person, you know.
Yeah.
And I think it's almost a mistake in a lot of ways to uh like well, I guess I'll rephrase this. The hardest part about any art career, I think, is the very beginning, because you don't know where to start. It's like, do I go into environmental design, or do I go into character design, or
Yeah.
uh, composite design, or whatever? And just because you're starting out, you have no idea what you like, what you don't like doing, and um, you're going to, I guess, run into things where you, yeah, you're going to have to experience a lot of trial and error. Um,
Yeah,
and
and I think I eventually landed at a place where it's like I like illustrating books and I like book illustrators, and I'm just gonna grab books that are in the public domain and illustrating them just
yeah,
because I want to see them exist. And I'm okay if no one sees it, but I again, we're all human, and sometimes it's frustrating. It's like, why is no one seeing this? You know what I mean?
yeah.
Um, uh, I get it. So. Um, in the interest of time, I know I have a few minutes left, and I wish I had a lot longer. I mean, I'm enjoying talking to you, so thank you again. There was a moment in the podcast where, now knowing that you've experienced some social anxiety in the past, I kind of look at it in a different light. There's a moment in your Morgan Weisling interview where he was kind of getting a little bit frustrated with you. Um,
Yeah.
how did you, or he was saying that talking with you was a little frustrating. How did that feel in the moment to kind of, I mean, I think you handled that pretty well. I mean, you did a pretty good job kind of following through with that, but that must have kind of felt a little uncomfortable.
I guess so. I mean, I think Morgan, and if you're listening to this, Morgan, I mean this in the nicest possible way. I think you're kind of an asshole. And I mean that from the, like, I think Morgan is a really great painter and a great artist. And uh, I think he just likes to paint, and he just likes to, like, he doesn't really think about stuff. He just goes and does it, which I think is, that's the way you become a really badass painter. Is you don't think about it. You just follow the process, and you just get really good at it. And um I think it's like, uh that was more of like a challenge of, or like a realization that people are actually different from me in a really fundamental way. Like, I Morgan doesn't think about the things I think about. We just have two different brains, two different sets of problems that we're trying to solve. We see the world differently fundamentally. And I think, uh you know part of being a person, like not just a creative person, is that you're going to go out through into the world, and you're going to be exposed to people that have completely different worldviews than you, that you like. You like those people, but and sometimes it's going to feel like those things that those people are saying, because they might have more authority, or you see them as more famous or whatever, you see those as things that you have to do because they're more authoritative. But the actual thing to do is, again, don't listen to them, and just do the things you actually really care about.
Yeah. And I
um
think, I mean, and I think the way your brain works versus his brain works go beyond art itself, right? Like,
yeah,
it's just,
100%.
yeah, he's approaching life a little differently, and I don't think he's staking a lot of identity and attaching a lot of meaning to what he's doing. He just enjoys it for the process of doing it, and
Yeah,
not kind of looking for a bigger, more romanticized meaning behind it. And it
yeah,
reminds me of, like, there's always two approaches to everything. Um, I tend to be a very happy nihilist, and I don't view nihilism as a negative thing. I tend to take actually a lot of comfort that I see the world as meaningless, but it brings me a lot of comfort because, like, I'll bring my own meaning, and I don't have a pressure of following a meaning that's predetermined.
yeah,
But another brain might view the world in a nihilistic way, and knowing that the world might be meaningless, and that makes them feel horrible.
yeah.
And I think that was an interesting podcast because it kind of presented two contrasts with you and him. Um, and and I was wondering, because, like, it was not uncomfortable to hear, but I was like, wow, that was pretty confrontational for a second there. But I think you handled it pretty well.
Well, I appreciate it. Well, again, I think it's like, when it comes to nihilism or not being nihil, I think Morgan and I actually agree probably on most things. Whether it's like the idea of God or spirituality, or painting or whatever. Um, it's just, yeah, two different people. The
Yeah.
uh like, if he were my age, I'm 28 now. If he were my age, he would be in his room or in his studio just working on movie posters or something, and he'd be aspirationally working to be just like a great artist. And I think he might have talked about it in the podcast, but he felt like he spent most of his career early on focusing like worshiping art versus worshiping being alive, and
Yeah.
art became his god in like an unhealthy way.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh yeah,
and
I could see that turning
yeah,
backfiring as
yeah,
well. Well, so I'm super running out of time here, Kristen, but I'm really enjoying this. I hope we could do this again at some point.
absolutely. Yeah, feel free to.
If your van ever drops by West Virginia or Ohio, shoot me an email, man.
Yeah,
I'd
no,
like to talk some more.
for sure.
And I think I'm like I'm gonna find another platform other than Zoom to do this in, so I don't have this time restriction. Um,
Yeah, I'll send over a couple that I use for like I guess Google Meet and OBS might also work as well. But
oh, okay. I didn't know. Oh
um,
shit, I forgot that I can record on OBS. That's actually a lot better. Like that's a better idea. Um, yeah, I'm gonna put this up like soon. I'll tag you and all. But I'm really really happy that we got to talk, and I really enjoyed this. So thanks for spending a little bit of time.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Well,
and yeah, hopefully stay in touch, man. It's been a pleasure.
for sure. Okay, well,
Yeah,
I guess I'll see you around.
yeah, yeah. Take care, man.
Bye.